Sports fans, don't forget to head over to my YouTube channel to watch my video coming up later today on the Sixers' newfound success. And while you're up and about, head over to iTunes and give us a rating. It will really help this show continue its upward trajectory. You in? Can the Sixers sustain their recent success? Have the Raptors solved their lineup issues? Who should really be starting at guard in the All-Star game? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. As always on Monday, we are solving the NBA's problems one question at a time, and when I say we, I mean me and Coach Dave Dufour. Dave. Hi.
Morning.
It's a beautiful morning somewhere in America. I'm not sure it's great here, but it's is it nice where you are?
It's actually really, really nice. It's like 64 degrees or something like that right now here in southern Arizona.
Nice. Well, it finally stopped raining in LA, so I can get out, turn the sump pump off for a little while. And we want to talk a little bit about the NBA today, or a lot about the NBA even.
Yeah.
And before I forget, don't forget to check out Dave's podcast. It's That Guy Podcast. And, a lot of times people say, don't be that guy. But, Dave, I want you to be that guy.
I embrace my that guyness fully.
Awesome.
I'm leaning into it.
All right, well.
No alternative facts here.
Yes. By the way, and I loved what Steve Kerr said. I don't know if you noticed. Did you see what he said about or his time in Orlando and how Sean Spicer would make it like that he was the best player of all time there and scored 18,000 points. So let's get on some Sixers news because certainly that's something that I think we can argue about. They've won 8 of 11 games. And I'm preparing a video, hey, a little self, whatever that's called when I'm shouting myself out. But we're doing a video and we're looking at some of the lineups, and it's exciting. The Sixers are finally experiencing a little bit of success. And I think that people are freaking out. I got to go dig up some of my tweets from a year and 2 years ago that had said that, this is all going to be forgotten around, I think I said for next year when they're really good or like the best team in the East. And certainly they're not there yet, but I think we're seeing some signs, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, so they've been one of the most fun teams to watch all year. They're a great story, especially with Embiid being healthy. And Embiid is probably – he's in my top 5 fun players to watch. I just love what he does. And it doesn't hurt that he's such a fun guy, right? Like he's obviously enjoying himself. And it's a feel-good story. The guy's been injured. He's been much maligned in the media the last couple of years, all the Shirley Temple talk, And so they've been fun to watch. Even losing, they've been fun to watch. But, man, so far this year, they have played really good basketball. Their defense has been much improved, and they're actually scoring the ball really, really well, even with T.J. McConnell as a point guard, which I can't understand.
Oh, I know. Well, I can understand because – I like T.J. McConnell. He is one of those throwbacks in a way of a guy, totally a pass-first point guard, not very aggressive at all. Now, I know I gave Ricky Rubio a lot of shit for like being so unaggressive that it was destroying their pick-and-roll game. And so that there's an issue there because he's similar in that way where he doesn't really ever look to shoot, but he's the guy that can go out there and end up getting you like an assist per minute or at least and really run the team. And he plays decent defense to good defense. And so whenever I turn it on and watch him, I'm always like, yeah, that's how he made the right play and he's playing within himself. And I just enjoy watching him play. And it is a little surprising, though, that inserting him in the starting lineup and Nick Stauskas has kind of led this resurgence. Although I think most people would yell at me in my fervor for Sergio Rodriguez and say, yes, get him on the bench finally. Don't let him play as much, and then they'll do better. And that's what's happened.
I disagree with that completely. I like Sergio, especially on this team. Now, maybe not so much right now where he has to be the primary ball handler. But when Simmons comes back, I think Sergio is a much better fit than TJ. TJ McConnell is shooting 24% from 3 on the season. I don't know how you can be that unathletic and that bad of a shooter and still be getting starters minutes in the NBA. It's incredible. And it is a testament to what that coaching staff has these guys doing. Embiid has been a monster. He's scored, what, is it 8 games in a row over 20 points, or is it 9 now?
Well, we can go quickly check on that one.
Yeah,
And
he's scoring the ball really, really well. Ilyasova is having a good run. It just feels like this whole team is just really, really coming together. I mean, they're still obviously a few pieces away, but I'm looking at the standings right now. They're only 5.5 games behind Chicago for the 8th seed. And, only 6.5 behind Indiana for the 7th seed. Now, I'm not thinking that they're going to make the 7th seed, but, man, wouldn't it be fun if the Sixers made a push for the 8th seed?
it would be fun, but before we get our panties all in a bunch over this, you have to look at who they played over the last 11 games as well. Now, part of the issue is that 2 of the games they lost were when Embiid was sitting. And we can talk about Embiid's intrinsic value in a second because it's startling off-on numbers. The net ratings are crazy. But since the 30th, when you look at the win over the Nuggets, which started this whole thing, so it's the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, they lost to the Celtics, and that was with Embiid, but it was close. And then they beat the Nets, the Knicks, the Hornets. They lost to the Wizards again without Embiid, and that was a blowout. They beat the Bucks. Now, the only win they can hang their hat on, I think, is the Raptors. That was a good win. They beat the Blazers, and they lost to the Hawks. So you're really looking at teams who are 500-ish or middling around there. Who are they beating up on, except for the Raptors? I have to imagine, I got to check real quick, but the Raptors most likely, I'm assuming, were on the second of a back-to-back on the road. No, they were home, actually. Forgive me. I don't know what that deal was. Did you know any idea why the Raptors lost like that?
The Raptors have been bad recently. I mean, really bad.
Good analysis.
Yeah, that's my expert analysis. Yes, they have been really bad. I want to say they were just blown out. Was it last night or the night before?
Yeah, they lost to the Suns by 12.
That's it
at home.
Yeah,
and they were at Philly for that loss in a close game, and it was a back-to-back. So it was the second of the back-to-back, third and 4 nights. So that that makes sense. That's the one of those games where you're like, okay, that's what that was. But you're right. They're on a 3-game skid. That's the thing about Philly. Right before we move on is that they haven't quite played any teams that make you excited. Now, what it does indicate to me is that they could be a 500 team.
Right. So one of my markers for an improving team, a decent team, and a good team, right? It's an improving team beats the teams that are like them. So the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the teams that are kind of young but struggling. A decent team beats bad teams, any bad team. And this team, that's what they're doing. They're beating bad teams.
Okay.
So they're not a good team because a good team, would have beaten Boston right before this run started, and or at least, but they were within 4 points. It was a close game. But they did beat the Hornets. That's a playoff team. Mm-hmm. They got blown out by the Wizards, another playoff team. They beat the Bucks, who were contending for that 8th seed. And they beat the Raptors and the Blazers. So I don't think that they're not the second best team in the East or anything. But I mean, would I put them in the top 8 right now? I don't know. I think it's debatable. As they're playing this month, of course this will change.
Well, if they finish 500 for the season, which is somewhat doable, then they'd be the 8th spot. That's really where they'd be, and that would be amazing. And again, people want to avoid that that middle 8th, 7th, 6th spot. You want to, but the problem is to improve, you kind of have to go through that area for a year or two to get that experience in the playoffs and be in that middle pack for a bit. You don't want to be there for 7 years in a row, but certainly, you're going to pass that on the way up if you have the right setting. So I'm encouraged, especially because Embiid. We'd look at the schedule to see just how many back-to-backs they have going forward because it's just a buzzkill when they you just know he's not going to play or they're going to sit him for that. But then what's clear here is when we're looking at the 5-man lineups. Okay, so what's really been the big thing for them has been the Covington, Embiid, McConnell, Saric, and Stauskas. Oh, I'm sorry. The starters first. Covington, Embiid, Ilyasova, McConnell, and Stauskas. That was the new starting lineup the last 11 games. It's a plus 20.4. Now the problem is it kind of drops off after that, whereas they're not doing well on the road, by the way. And again, it's skewed because Embiid hasn't played in a couple of those losses, but they play much better at home, and the bench is a bit of a problem. But you're going to bring in a bona fide NBA player in Simmons, and that is going to make for a lot of different changes, I would imagine, for the positive.
Yeah, you hope. I mean, a lot of this will depend on how he defends from day one, and how he shoots. I mean, we know the playmaking is there, but I guess if you're just plugging him in the lineup for McConnell, you're going to get a better playmaker. You're going to get a longer defender, and the shooting is probably about the same. Which, again, I don't understand the TJ McConnell thing. It's one of the weirdest. And I mean, good for him. Like, he has found a way to be in the NBA and to stick. And they love him in Philly, so that's great. But man, it's just so weird to me that guy is on a team. I mean, just because of the lack of athleticism. I mean, he definitely knows where to go. That game winner against the Knicks was such a smart play. He took off. He was going in for the layup, hit a turnaround that I didn't know he had in his arsenal. So maybe he just hasn't. I haven't given him enough of a chance to kind of see what he can do. But either way, I mean, they have been playing so much better since he's been in the starting lineup. I can't imagine that they change it until Simmons is ready.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let Simmons come off the bench, because I don't think anyone believes he's going to shoot well. Right. Like you said, his form is troubling. That said, we're looking at Lonzo Ball shoot very well at UCLA in not the same kind of thing, but there's a similar idea where maybe his other eye is dominant. He wants to be a shooter from the other side of his face. But I just don't anticipate that, because we never saw Simmons shoot well in college either. We, at least with Ball, we're having some, there's examples. So, but you're right. He's just another good NBA player to bring in. That I think he's going to be a good NBA player, and so that only should help. And certainly, if McConnell ever went to the bench on the other end, then McConnell would be that much better too, because he's probably best suited against the second team players. And with the motion they get in their offense, it's not that surprising to me that he can kind of have an effect without shooting well, because they're getting him off of handoffs. He's able to sort of get half a step. He's not going to get a step by anybody, but he's able to sort of utilize the motion to find the cracks. Whereas if you want to spot him up or have him be had that threat to try and drag his defender out of the lane, like, that's not going to work for him as much. So there's a lot of good confluence of events here. Do you think they're going to make the playoffs? Is this a real thing that could happen?
I doubt it. But, like you said, there is a process to learning how to win. And I think that if they made the playoffs, that would be huge for them. I do think they'll make the playoffs next year. I think that they're going to be that 7-8 seed next year, because Embiid should be off the minutes restriction and should be able to play back-to-backs. And I think, and this is going to sound crazy, we're going to be talking about Joel Embiid this summer, like we talked about Karl Anthony Towns last year, and you're going to get a lot of people saying he's a dark horse to win MVP. I mean, I really think so. If you look, all right, so his usage is off the charts, and his numbers are incredible, and he's only playing like 25 minutes a night. His per 36 numbers are historic. And, there's a huge case. I mean, obviously Harden is the MVP right now. And there's a huge case to be made for Westbrook. But I think it's time to start talking about Embiid, at least in the theoretical sense, as MVP. Not realistic, because he hasn't played enough. He misses games and stuff like that. But to consider what he's done for this team in just making them competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a doormat last year, and he has just made them competitive simply by being on the court.
Right. Well, by the way, you want to turn the game off when he goes out or he's not playing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I kind of don't want to watch, because it's so transfixing when he's on the court. And just to get a feeling for what it means when he is on versus when he's off, it's a 32-point swing. Basically, his net rating when he's on is plus 16.7. Oh, this is the last 11 games. Plus 16.7, and then when he goes off, it's negative 14.6. So you're talking about now. Again, they're factoring in two of the games he didn't play. I don't know if I can figure out how to get those out of there. But either way, it's so significant when he's in there, when he's out, that you're right. It's a good argument in the abstract. He just won't play enough, and they won't win enough.
Right. He and Robert Covington can be the two best defenders on a top 5 defense. I firmly believe that. I think Embiid is athletic enough, and I think that the nuances to playing big man defense in the NBA will come to him with more experience. But I think they've got the start of something really, really great in Philly, and I wouldn't be shocked. They're kind of like a good point guard away from being good next season.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, they got to find more time for Saric. They got to figure out the whole Okafor issue, which we didn't even bring up, which is interesting because I think they should keep Noel and get rid of Okafor. That's who I would do because I like what they can do with Noel on the defensive end as well. It's much more versatile, and yet it looks like that's the opposite. They want to just play Noel more to move him, and it's a bummer for me.
Well, are you willing to sink $18 million a year into a backup center?
Yeah. What's $18 million these days? Okay, let's just say this. If he developed and he ended up doing what I think he could do, which would be a terrific defensive force, like maybe your best defensive player, and, I've seen him hit a jump shot, like a little 15-footer. I've seen him put the ball, dribble once, and go to the basket. Like, if he could become a guy that's, a threat-ish on the offensive end, and he's a terror on the defensive end, then yeah, $18 million in this new CBA, I know it's going to be a squeeze with everybody else as well, but I'd like to see him give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, again, in the abstract, Noel is better than Okafor, but the financial realities being what they are. Okafor is cheap for another 2 seasons. Noel's about to get really expensive. Noel's going to be the odd man out. For a team like this, when you've got Embiid, and Embiid is going to play 35, 36 minutes a game at center, Noel's not a 4. I don't think he'll ever be able to shoot well enough to be a 4. The minutes just aren't there. I think that you can use Okafor to kind of prop up the offense in second units. He's a good passer, and when he's engaged and willing, he's not a terrible defender. But he's got to be engaged and willing. That's the issue.
Is it that hard to give him the 12 minutes at center that Embiid is sitting, and then get him 10 more minutes or so alongside him? I don't know. It doesn't seem.
I think I don't know. That's a weird lineup, but they've got options, which is really nice for this team because they've just been so bad for the last 4 years. So.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. So, and then speaking of options, we could talk about the Raptors for a second because our old friend Dwayne Casey is possibly up to some old shenanigans again with his lineup playing. I've ripped him to shreds in the past about it. And one thing I wanted to make clear, I was talking to somebody over the weekend about this, which was, sometimes you might have, a whole season's worth of data to show like, okay, this is a really good lineup for you, this is a good lineup for you. And then you get into a playoff situation and you think right away, well, that's not a good matchup for us. And so you don't really play it. And my take tends to be, well, why don't you make them match up to you? Otherwise, why did you waste your time with these certain lineups? You played a lot during the regular season, and then I'll just abandon them. And I think the one thing we're going to maybe hammer on right now is that his most played lineup this year for the Raptors, the starters, with Siakam in there, is a negative 6.6 net rating. And there is no good team in the league that has their starters at negative net rating. None. You cannot be considered a good team if that's the case. And here we are.
Yeah, that's the Lowry, DeRozan, Carroll, Siakam, and Valanciunas.
Yes.
Yeah. So that lineup has quite a few problems, doesn't it?
It does. Now, are you going to blame it all on Siakam?
No. I actually, DeRozan's having a great year. I'm always couching this stuff. DeRozan's having a great year scoring. He's experienced a little bit of a downturn here recently, as we all expected. But his inability to shoot threes and to stretch the floor and to make the offense easier, and his tendency to kind of pound the rock a little bit, I think that causes a lot of trouble for that lineup. Also, having Siakam instead of Patterson. Patterson is the best forward that they have on the roster. He's a good defender, and he's a really good shooter. He does so much for you just being able to stretch the floor legitimately.
Yeah.
That he needs to play over Siakam. Now I think that now he's starting over Siakam, but
okay. Well, now we've seen that, but okay. So let's go to when we look at the lineups and you look at the net ratings. Okay, the next most played lineup that they do have is let me make sure I'm completely correct here. Yes, is without DeRozan. So when you're looking at it, with or without DeRozan, it's Joseph, Corey Joseph. I'm reading it. They do it.
Yeah.
And it's so dumb on the NBA media thing, but whatever. Corey Joseph, Kyle Lowry, Lucas Nogueira, Patrick Patterson, and Terrence Ross. This is probably their best shooters, right? All across, except for Nogueira, but whatever. He doesn't need to be a shooter. And that is a plus 23.2 net rating. And it's a lot of it's 24 games, 151 minutes. It's the second most played lineup they have. And yet it's dwarfed. It's he's played the starters twice as many minutes as that thing, and that's an issue here. And I think that teams are figuring this out a little bit, and they're starting to become a problem. They've lost 3 in a row now, and this is an issue here where he might need. I mean, what's the change? You're not going to not start DeRozan. But I guess, and is Patrick Patterson enough to shove in that lineup? I guess the real question is, how is that lineup doing now with Patrick Patterson and the other 4 starters?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously they've lost 3 straight, so they've got to sort some stuff out, and the offense is a huge problem. Their defense actually hasn't been as good this season for the whole season, but their offense, after being up in the top 1 or 2 in offensive rating, they've dropped off here recently a little bit, and they're no longer lighting the world on fire. But DeRozan has a place.
And let me throw this in here because I started my idea without actually knowing the answer. Carroll, DeRozan, Lowry, Patterson, and Valanciunas, the new starters, they played a ton of minutes as well. That is a plus 26.4.
There you go. So Patrick Patterson is the fix.
Yeah, that seems to be the fix. I feel like Valanciunas is kind of the odd man out too. I don't know what's going on. It seems like I haven't even. He seems like a non. He doesn't seem like he's a factor out there. Am I crazy?
Yeah, he's got such a. I don't know. It's such a weird game. He's kind of a more of an old school center, but he can make free throws, which is great. On my podcast this week, which actually just dropped this morning, I talked to Chris Axman from the Almighty Ball and NBA show, and he gave me an interesting trade, and I'm curious what you think about this. Andre Drummond for Valanciunas.
Oh.
In theory, it sort of solves both teams' kind of issues, right? The Raptors don't really need what Valanciunas does, and the Pistons do, but the Raptors could use a rebounder like Drummond and a guy to catch lobs.
I'm intrigued. I'm not. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this before about how I think we both don't like Drummond that much, right?
No.
I don't know why he's considered as high as he is. I mean, I don't know if he still is or not, but is Drummond a lot like what they had in Biyombo, but like better? Yeah, right. He's probably in that same mold, but maybe could do. But Drummond could produce more in the same way.
Right. So kind of just cleaning up the mess, which is sort of what they're lacking right now. And then with Patterson out there, and then I wonder about DeMarre Carroll and Terrence Ross, and if the dynamism that Terrence Ross offers you at that 3 spot is worth losing the defense that DeMarre Carroll provides. So, I mean, Dwayne Casey has options. That's the big thing. It's just, will he explore them during the regular season to try to find something that's going to work in the playoffs? I mean, Toronto's going to be probably the 2 seed.
Right.
It's not a lock necessarily because there's still a lot of season left, but they're probably going to be the 2 seed. But the time is now to figure out what you're going to do when you run into Indiana or the Wizards or some team where DeMar DeRozan is just probably going to get shut down like last year.
Yes. I mean, that would certainly be the conventional wisdom, would be that teams, the good teams will know how to defend that and know how to take away enough where he's really taking. So those contested 17-footers are now contested 21-footers and 22. And that's always what we've been saying the whole time is that, you get out to that far and all of a sudden those are not as good shots as they are when he's making them closer. Yeah, I mean, so I guess this is the thing now, the inevitable DeMar DeRozan to frozen playoff run.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So we've got a few questions. If you want to answer some questions,
don't be that guy, please.
Okay. Well, actually, it's not quite a question. Someone just asked us to talk about DeMarcus Cousins' foul on Dwayne Wade. The little touch foul.
Oh yes, yes. It was horrible, ridiculous. The worst call I've seen in a long, long time. And the only thing I did, I was looking at it because I was traveling, but I saw like on my phone. I just couldn't figure out which ref called it. Was it the lead official or the trail? Because that would obviously give some indication of what was going on there. Was there a 2-minute report on that one?
Yeah, it came out and they said that they made the wrong call.
Okay.
So
we all feel better now.
Yeah, that's what DeMarcus Cousins said.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And
my bad.
And rightfully so. Rightfully so. He has a right to be upset about it. It cost him a game. And even though I don't necessarily think that they should, but they're trying to make the 8th seed.
Right. Well, wait. It didn't quite cost them the game. Remember, they were down by 1, right? Isn't that what happened?
No, that put them on the free throw line to when they were tied.
Oh, it was a tie game? Well, I thought Chicago was already up by 1 anyway. But anyway, yeah, it was a terrible call. It directly affected the game without question. Dwayne Wade, if you want a sign of him losing his athletic ability, there's a good one right there for you. And yeah, it's got to be frustrating, and it's got to be connected to who Boogie is, and there's probably some karma associated with that. And that's his burden, unfortunately, but that doesn't excuse the call at all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. It was a nice flop, though, by D. Wade. I mean, give the man credit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's embarrassing to do what you do, to miss like that.
It is. I mean, that's one of those instances where it's like, oh, I have to grab my knee or my hamstring or my back. Oh, I missed it so bad.
I see, because I never miss those dunks.
Yeah, at least not recently. Not
right.
recently.
I throw that down. I don't, it clean through the net. I don't hit my head or anything on it. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So that was just a real problem. And again, there's this notion of stars and getting calls and or not getting calls just because of who you are, which is again that's life as well, right? I mean, it happens everywhere. Just like Nazis getting punched, it happens. It kind of reminded me really quickly about, we're talking about DeMarre Carroll, and this came up earlier. I don't know how people are interested, but the notion of the Hawks struggling and kind of losing their way, I think is directly related to them as soon as DeMarre Carroll left.
I agree.
And as soon as they plugged, and also in conjunction with that, as soon as they plugged the lefty into his spot, Ken Bazemore into his spot. The funny thing was that the next year, and I had forgotten in the big year, the great year they had, Bazemore was on that team, was coming off the bench. I kind of had forgotten. I thought they switched him out 1 for 1. But, Bazemore gave them almost the same numbers as Carroll the next year. But, and it's probably worth a breakdown. It was intrinsically such worse basketball from him. His passes are almost always off target. And guys had to be reaching. Instead of DeMarre Carroll throwing a nice easy pass for a nice easy catch and shoot, they'd be about his knees or they'd be way off target. His decisions on how to drive and when he would, these wild forays to the rim. So I think that ended up being a real big turning point for both teams. And then, of course, when Carroll goes to the Raptors and gets hurt as much as he did, that also really killed the Raptors, because had they had him, that might have changed some other things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that has shown that he could guard LeBron James. And, of course, that's what everything is about in the East. That year that the Hawks won 60 games or 62 or whatever it was, I don't think they were actually a 60-win team. I think they won a lot of close games that, were like 50-50 games. I don't know the numbers on what the point differential was, but I feel like they were more like a 54-55 win team rather than a 60-win team. So there's a little bit of fool's gold there, I think, with the record. But I think the bigger thing that DeMarre brought to the Hawks was, it was culture, hard nose. They were playing great defense that season. And, if you're trying to defend, I'd rather have DeMarre Carroll than Kent Bazemore.
Right. Well, also, the thing with that was DeMarre Carroll was their leading scorer in the playoffs.
Right.
And he's your best defender. And then he goes away. And they wanted to make it seem like, oh, we can just replace him. And, I know that, the other guys like Horford and Millsap were like the leaders and doing well in Teague. But he was their best player in the playoffs. And then until he got hurt. And so that was not to be overlooked. And it's kind of funny because Carroll wouldn't necessarily be a guy you'd assume would be, he's this real big X factor game changer, but he was at that time. And I don't know if he's ever fully recovered. It seems like he's rushed back from knee injuries, and he doesn't have the same impact now as he did back then. It doesn't feel like even now.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously, the knee has not recovered to where it was. And, that sucks. It sucks for Toronto because, they signed this guy thinking, all right, now we've got another cornerstone piece. Mm-hmm. We've got, Lowry, DeRozan, DeMarre Carroll, and he has been kind of a shell of himself so far.
And by the way, it'll be interesting to see because obviously they had the high hopes they were going to compete with Cleveland. This is probably one of their last chances. I mean, I know that Lowry and DeRozan are kind of still young-ish, but at some point, if you lose 2, 3, 4 years in a row, the same way, then you're probably going to, I don't think Ujiri is going to continue the same path. So you might think that they're going to maybe do something to shake it up. And you kind of wonder, like, they might have already passed that by, and it might be time.
Well, Lowry's 31, or he will be 31, and he's on an expiring contract. So he's going to be looking for a max from Toronto this summer.
Oh, yeah.
And he's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if you give him that. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of miles on him, which is nice.
They'll give him the max, and they might regret it the last year. Is it 5 years now?
I think it'd be a 5 year.
So maybe they regret the 5th year, but they'll get good numbers, I think, for the next 3 or so. But but it is interesting. It's interesting how all these things end up are very interconnected, and like one move here affects everything else. And do you have any other questions, by the way?
Let's see. Looking. Somebody wanted us to talk about Westbrook being snubbed out of the All-Star starting lineup.
Okay.
I mean, it's a popularity contest, so I mean, that's not a basketball decision. So I don't really have like much of an opinion on it, except for maybe don't let the fans vote.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that Westbrook has had a better half season than Curry.
Yeah, and should be the starter.
Yeah, well, I mean, right. Like, if you want to finish that sentence, you're more than welcome to. I'll go as far as saying he's had a better year than Curry, and and shrug and walk away. I don't know what else to say because it happens all the time. Because you know what, Isaiah Thomas has had a better year than Kyrie Irving.
Oh yeah, was Kyrie named a starter?
Yep.
See, it should have been all right. So it should have been Kyle Lowry and John Wall, because I think John Wall has had a better season than Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, well, now let's get into something here.
Well, all right, so Isaiah Thomas is scoring 28 points a game. He's been fantastic. But his defense is a negative for Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the lineups that he's in there is like +2 or something like that. And don't get me wrong, I love to watch him. I mean, this is like a Westbrook thing for me. Like, I love to watch Westbrook play. I love to watch Isaiah Thomas play. But his size is a liability on defense. No question. I mean, he has a hard time defending. Anybody with any sort of size is just going to shoot right over him. And his scoring is great, but if you're scoring 28 and you're giving up 26, you really aren't doing that much. Whereas John Wall, he's scoring 22, so he's not that far behind. He's initiating more offense, being more of a playmaker than Isaiah Thomas. And he's playing, John Wall, like 95% of John Wall level defense. So, I think John Wall's been better.
You know what? Because the video I was going to do this week was why Isaiah should start over Kyrie. And guess what? It should be why Isaiah should start over Kyrie and then comma, and then why John Wall should start over Isaiah.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's, or maybe I'll just do the greater than symbol. What is it? Kyrie less than Isaiah less than Wall. Fascinating. You are right. You know what? You are right. I mean, as far as the numbers and the output go, I'm gonna have to dig into the footage and just sort of watch some Wall from this year. But you're right. When Wall's doing Wall things, then he is as good as anybody in the league at that position. And so, that's a great point. So we'll have to have a couple quotes in there to tout on Twitter for this podcast. But fascinating stuff. Have you watched much Wizards this year?
So I watched the other day. I watched the game with the Pistons, and it's difficult because the Pistons are not very fun to watch. And what you could see, what they wanted to do was kind of slog it out with the Wizards. The Wizards wanted to get out and run, which I love. When you've got Beal and you've got Wall, definitely run. Otto Porter has been fantastic this year, and every time I'm watching him, he's doing good stuff. He's hitting threes. He's playing good defense. He's going to get a max deal this summer.
Yeah,
of somebody. And if the Wizards are smart, they're going to try to keep him. And they've been really interesting. I watched a bunch of their games early, and they were bad. And so now that guys have kind of gotten healthier, John Wall included, they're really, really turning it on. And it's pretty interesting. They did just lose to the Pistons on that tip in, but that final possession was impressive. Otto Porter blocked a three by Tobias Harris and going out of bounds, and then Tobias Harris gets his own rebound and puts up another shot. And is it Marcus is in Detroit? Marcus Morris, comes over the back of his brother Markieff for the tip in. I mean, it was a good defensive possession by the Wizards, and they just got unlucky. But it was still that last minute and a half of that game was pretty fun to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, which also reminds me, I was watching the game at the end, the Spurs versus the Cavs, which is also a very fun game to watch. And, the Cavs, they might have some reason to be concerned a little bit. Now, I tweeted out that this would be an awesome finals. And it was a bit of a troll job, and no one really picked up on it because the absence of this would be an awesome finals because Warriors-Cavs won't would be the next inference, which I didn't say, but I'm thinking that again we talked about Pop last time, right? And how no one criticizes him, and I tell you, why Manu's out there again at the end, and defensively when they need something better. And he's not out there. And I was at a bar. It was hard to hear. I didn't know if there was if Simmons was in foul trouble or whatever. But, there's some really interesting things going on. And then they zone up the last play. And, Slow-Mo falls asleep and doesn't what seemed to me clear was that they're going to zone, and if a guy cuts through your zone, then you stay with him after the initial screens, which is a great defensive concept. But Anderson completely doesn't go with Love, gets a wide open shot with 0.7 seconds to go to catch and shoot it. I don't think he hit the rim, right?
No, he shot an air ball. I mean, it was tough though. It was 0.6, so it was barely catch and shoot.
Okay,
it was a tough shot, and Anderson did get there to contest. But, you said it. The weird lineup stuff that Pop is doing, I mean, having Manu out there in defensive crunch time when they had a lead.
Yeah.
They continuously gave up the middle, and there was no thought of putting Dwayne Dedmon on the floor, even though Dwayne Dedmon had really, dominated when he was in that game. It's I don't know, man. It's like some more of this stubborn Pop stuff. And I know, he doesn't care about that game. He's trying to prove points, or he's trying to build up confidence or whatever. But it's so frustrating that he doesn't play his best defenders when he's got a lead in crunch time.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting that I need to get Ronnie on here to talk about was the timeout that apparently they gave the Cavaliers that set up that last shot that could have been a game tire. LeBron goes up in the air to get the missed free throw and tries to snatch it and call timeout at the same time and ultimately just fumbled the ball. And he did not have possession. You need to have possession before you call timeout. And they gave it to him, right? I mean, I didn't hear the audio on the screen, but it seems like they inbounded to the half court. It must be a timeout, right?
They did give him the timeout, and it shouldn't have been.
So we had like the Wade call. We got LeBron call here. It's frustrating. These are the things that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. Jeff Van Gundy brought up a good point about the replay stuff. His thing was, why can't these refs just have an earpiece? And so when there's a close call, someone can just say, yep, he stepped on the line, or yep, he had possession, or whatever, instead of going to the table. And these guys have to then go on the screen, and they've got to be like, hey, back it up. Can you zoom in? All this other stuff. Like,
yeah.
Isn't that the point? Like, we've got the replay center. We don't actually need those referees watching the replay. Can't we just say we trust the guy in Secaucus to look at the video and then wire it in? That's it.
But isn't the guy in Secaucus ultimately making the decision and then telling them, or not?
No. The referee on the floor is still making the decision. That's why he goes to the booth.
Oh, I see. They're just weighing in, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess it was never really clear. I guess I assumed because they have all those screens and that whole thing in New Jersey that they get to decide. But either way, it's just it's frustrating because I think good referees are usually in good position and they can make the correct call either way. And so I have a feeling that and by the way, the review of that call for the LeBron timeout wasn't about whether he had a possession. It was about what time the clock should be at.
Right.
And they must have been like looking at them saying, crap, we blew this, but there's no way to change it at that point. Although you could have. I mean, it seems like you couldn't. Like you just would have called the game over because the clock would have ran out. So
right.
It's troubling. And people were asking me on Twitter, do I feel like the refereeing is worse now? Or is an issue. And, we've had years where it's been terrible, and we've had years where it's been quiet, which means good, basically. So do you think there's been anything worse than normal?
No, I just think it's more scrutiny. It's just like when people think the world is more violent because there's more news, right? But it's actually, this is the safest time to be a human being on this planet ever. And so, I think it's just more scrutiny. We're the last 2-minute report, we're now seeing, like, they're admitting the mistakes when they make them instead of just moving on, which if you move on from them, people don't talk about them except for like the Robert Horry hip check and, things like that. They got to be huge. And so, I think that's it. It's just, it's now under a microscope because of how much attention the NBA and, like the Sports Center will show a replay of a bad call 60 times. How many times do they show a good call?
Right. Maybe I should do that. I should do a breakdown. Look at how he called traveling, and he got his fists up and down around each other so well,
Now, I was impressed with the refs in that game for the most part because, LeBron picked up 3 fouls in the first half. When was the last time that happened? And one of them was an offensive foul, and LeBron is one of the most egregious offensive foulers in the NBA. Like, he barrels through guys, drops his shoulder, which is illegal, sticks his arm out all the time, and they actually called him for it and called him for 2 travels. So, I think that they did a pretty good job. Like, they called stuff the way that they should have been called. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that timeout. And honestly, as a fan, as a guy watching the game at home, I want him to get the timeout.
Yeah.
I want him to have a shot at it.
Yeah.
I wanted Kevin Love to hit the 3. Let's have another OT. It was a fun game.
Yeah, all that's a very, very good points. And I missed the first half, so I didn't see the traveling calls. But I feel like I wonder if I had a hand in that because I've been over the last couple of weeks tweeting out videos of travels from him and from Harden. Although gather step, whatever. And I'm just kind of being provocative, but at some point there's something going on here where it's like it's just too many steps, and we need to clean that up.
Well, now I've come out as a guy that doesn't think that we need to call more travels. I think we need to call travels when the player gains an advantage. But like a guy at half court lifting up his pivot foot, all right, the one travel that I'm okay with them calling was that Russell Westbrook travel from the other night.
Okay, what the hell was that?
You know what, man? I think he was coming up to check the ball up. That's the only thing I could think of. He was like, "Hey, check. What's the score?"
Yes.
I just. It was really funny, and I feel bad for Russ because that's embarrassing.
Well, here's why the worst part about it. Are you ready? Are you listening? Are you sitting down?
I am.
Because as we all did we talk about this before in the other podcast, or have I talked about this with anybody else? I can't remember now. Here's the deal. Like when you watch Sampras and Agassi play, I feel like this is the point I made before. One of them might lose a point in the second set and be like, that was the match. That one point in the second, it's going to be 6-4, 6-4, 6-4 now because of that. Well, they were in the middle of a run in the third quarter. And this is the Warriors run that they do every third quarter that's going to decide the game. And if you can't, you need to get a good shot every time down in the middle of that to stay pace. So what happens? He travels there. He takes 3 horrible shots and turns over another turnover, and then dunks in there once in the midst of all that.
And it's a 20-point lead.
Yeah, and then they're done. It's a 12-point lead, and it's over. It's over.
Yeah.
The game was done. When it was a close game, and you never know, he had a shot. And so Russ could have all these numbers. He could score 30 points after that and 10 assists in the fourth quarter. But it's for naught because of what he did there, and that was the poster child for what was going on. And it was. I don't even know people. The NBA guys I heard talk to, like they don't even understand what that was. They cannot figure out what
it was
doing.
A brain fart. It's sort of like when guys try to inbound the ball for the other team. I don't know. I'm not thinking too much about it. I thought it was funny. But you know what? Hey, that reminds me. We haven't even talked about the Warriors, and the Warriors just finished a fantastic week. Yeah, a great week. I mean, they are on a run right now. I mean, they decimated the Cavs on Monday. They destroyed the Thunder on Wednesday, and then they just completely blew out the Rockets on Friday. And then, not to mention on Sunday with Orlando, but it's Orlando.
Right.
They had a really great week, and so they avenged 2 of their losses on the season, and in convincing fashion. So, how about the Warriors? Do you think that there's a chance the Warriors don't lose a game for the rest of the year?
But they can easily almost match what they did last year at this point.
Yeah.
Now they've lost a couple, so they're not going to get to 73. But like that. Here's the thing: it's the way they're doing it, and what I'm gathering. And if you combine both and I should do maybe a breakdown to kind of merge both Warriors Cavaliers games. What's clear in my mind. And even though they lost that one, at the end against the Cavs, was that the Cavs have no answer for Kevin Durant. He overwhelmed Kevin Love, I thought, defensively. I thought Kevin Love was trying and post him up, and he couldn't really do that. And he certainly doesn't take him outside very well. And I thought that on the other end, Durant was just having his way for 80% of both those games. So like maybe 100% of the game 2, and then most of the game 1. There was a moment like in that third quarter of game 1 where I'm like, there's just no answer. It's going to be overwhelming to them, and it's like, so can the Cavs beat them in 7 games? Like, yeah, and it would have to be a titanic, amazing, incredible effort. That's the only way they're going to do it. And 8 out of 10 times, the Warriors just have too much.
Well, that's what it took last year.
Yeah,
and the Warriors, for all intents and purposes, got better. So yeah, I don't know. I think that the Warriors right now are playing probably the best basketball that we've ever seen, including better than last year's Warriors team. For all the talk about them needing a big man, until David West went out, they have been really, really solid. Zaza has really come on. He's been that 85 to 90% of Bogut that they need.
Well, let's not get crazy, but okay.
Yeah, but he still misses 3 wide open layups a game. And JaVale's been okay, and they're getting production in places where they didn't expect. So, yeah, I mean, I think as we all know, the Warriors are really good, and it's probably their championship. But to change the subject, have you seen the breaking news today?
I have not.
Star Wars Episode 8 now has a name.
Okay.
This just popped up on my screen.
What is the name?
The Last Jedi.
Oh, right. It's going to have to be Rey, I guess, The Last Jedi, right?
Or Jedi's plural.
Oh, so, yeah, look at you. That's true. Look at you with the whole Jedi grammar, the Jedi grammar.
There you go.
Yes. Okay. That's very exciting. After Rogue One being what it was, not a bad little thumb up in the middle of the run. So okay, that's exciting. The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm just fiending for more Star Wars news.
Well,
it's got to get me through the rest of January and February.
When is it coming out? Like in December?
December 15th, yeah.
All right, good. So, well, it's not that'll be here pretty quick. So, but we got a lot of basketball before that, and we'll have to find out what's going on. So, Dave, thanks for breaking this down with us. I thought this was a really interesting discussion because it went through a lot of sort of maybe not the kind of thing you would think would all connect in a way.
Yeah, well, I like when we get a chance to talk about teams rather than just like this guy, and we actually get to talk about a lot of like what's happening with a few teams, and especially like teams that are doing some interesting stuff right now. Things to look for this week, like the Sixers, right? Like, can they keep this run going?
Yeah, I mean they're playing the Clippers, but the Clippers are now not the Clippers either.
And Blake's coming back, but not tonight. Also, there's the rumor that Ben Simmons will be back Friday.
Yep, and that would be against the Rockets. But you look at their schedule: Clippers, Bucks, Rockets, Bulls, Kings, Mavericks. They could continue this. They could keep winning.
Yeah, and so that's something to watch. And then the other thing is, like the trade deadline is not far away, and so I wonder if we start to hear more and more about guys getting moved. And it wouldn't shock me to just, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you start hearing the Lillard McCollum stuff, don't be surprised.
Well, you heard it here first, folks, or you heard it here second or third, but, somewhere. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Dave, to break this stuff down, and we will do it again next Monday, as always, as we solve some more problems in the NBA with all your questions and all of our answers. So thanks for joining us, and don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.